Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of our interview with Pippa. We're talking all about Pippa's journey through her life, both in football and her journey as a member of the trans community. And it's been truly insightful to hear about Pippa's journey, so we're delighted to have you back with us for part 2.
Thank you.
Okay, Pippa, so linking on to what you said about the next stage of your journey, so you spoke about you going to the GP and having that initial conversation. So how's that journey transpired?
Right, well, it was such, again, it was a big thing for me to go to the GP and say, I am a woman.
Yeah.
And when I went there, the GP didn't have a clue. He went, oh, I've not had this before. And we're going back 3 years. We're not going back to the 90s or the 80s. This is 3 years ago. He said, we've never had any people with gender issues. I went, okay, so what do I do? Well, he says, we'll have to refer you to the gender clinic, but it's going to be a long wait. And that was all I got from the GP. There was no support. I wasn't signposted or to anywhere that could help me at that time, but it was the start of my journey, and it was the start of a journey. Yes, I've got my family with me and they helped me all the way, but it was a journey I had to do on my own.
Yeah.
So I got to the stage where I was in the final year at the holiday park, and I'd met somebody and we were getting on really well, and it was a relationship, and I was a woman in this relationship, and it was great, but I was still half Pete at the caravan, and it just wasn't right for me.
Yeah.
But it got to the end of that season, and it was like, it got to November, and I got a phone call from the owner of the holiday park, and he sacked me. He just flat sacked me. He said, you're not needed in 2020. And I thought, why? What have I done? Nothing. We just don't, your services aren't required in 2020. I went, right, fine, okay. And I was at that crossroads then where I had to make that that decision. Do I stay as I am? Or do I go for it? Do I go for it full time? Yeah. Everything was starting. Yeah. I do think at the time that the holiday park did find out about who I was,
right,
because I was out a lot more. So I think it was getting a bit more obvious that I'd hit that stage, and obviously we didn't word it that way. But I made that decision that this is who I've got to be.
Yeah.
But the ironic thing with that was when he said my services weren't needed for 2020, if I'd have gone back to the holiday park for that next year, I'd have done the first weekend, and then everywhere shut for the pandemic. So I'd have been homeless, I'd have been bankrupt, and I'd have still been half Pete. So it's like somebody up there was looking out for me. So getting rid of me in November, I had to get my backside into gear. I had to make a decision. I now needed a job. I needed something. And it was like, what do I do? So my partner then, I moved in with her, and she lived near Stoke. And it was like, she was a carer, and I thought, I'm going to be a carer. Let's do it.
Okay.
So I ended up doing care with the same company that she was, but within a different place. And I was totally accepted by all my work colleagues, and they're all friends now, all absolutely amazing. And it was fantastic being at that place, being who I was. There was the odd time when people called me he, but I turned it into a joke at the beginning. If anybody called me he, they had to buy me a chocolate. They stopped saying he after so many chocolates were coming my way, which again is the best way to do it. Is again, people haven't worked with somebody like me before. It was all new to everybody, whether it was service users, whether it was staff. Nobody had worked with anyone like me before, and it was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But back to the NHS bit, because it's all intermingling with each other. At that time, that partner ended it with me, and we were right in the pandemic, and we were on lockdown, and I had to find somewhere to live. So I ended up moving back to the Wirral in a friend's house while she was looking after her mum in Liverpool. So I was doing that, but I was living on my own. I couldn't see my family, we weren't allowed to, and it was like going from Wirral to Winsford every morning. The roads were empty. It was just like, it was a scary place to be.
Yeah.
And I was in care for the first time. And I think at that time then, that was when my mental health was starting, I think, to deteriorate. Because nothing was happening, I couldn't see anybody, and it was literally just work, there was no support still. And yes, I was living a life as me, I was now full-time as me, and I was feeling good. But my hormone journey hadn't started, and that was something that I really needed to start, was my hormones. And I knew that it was going to be a massive wait for the NHS to kick in. I waited near enough 3 years for them to actually kick in, and it was, I actually went online to an online doctor, gender doctor, who would help me. And I was on minimum wage, and I had to lay out £200 to sign up. I had to pay £70 for a consultation fee, and that was when I got my diagnosis of gender dysphoria. But the NHS would not accept that because it was private. They wouldn't accept that diagnosis. So now I was paying for my hormones, and my hormone journey had actually started for the first time, and it was the best thing ever. And it was that time then where I had to make a decision where I was going to move to. I think it was June during the lockdown 1, and it was like, do I stay on the Wirral and commute to Winsford? Do I move back to Stoke so I can work in Winsford, but it's too far away from home? I was like finding a happy middle ground, and I ended up thinking, well, I'll move to Crewe. Crewe will be good. And I actually got a place in Crewe, knew nobody there, but we were still in lockdown, and I was still going to work every day, but it was a lot closer. And I was a lot more happier in myself, living in a house share where I still am today, and totally accepted. No one said anything to me. It was just like a lovely time of my life where I could start being me. I was on my hormones, and life was looking up. But the way I did it was, my journey had to be manageable steps. So when I started, and I didn't say, right, I'm here right at the beginning, I'm now going to get ready for the full surgery. There was no way that was going to happen. So it was like, right, I need a job, I need somewhere to live, I need to change my name by deed poll, which was remarkably easy. That was dead easy. And it was then, okay, HMRC, I've got to change that. Luckily I didn't have a passport, so changed my driving licence. So it was all manageable little bits that I could cope with. So if I'd have gone right at the beginning and said, right, I'm changing my name, even that would have been a step too far.
You've had to wait a long time to do that though, haven't you?
Yeah. Everything I've had to wait for. And it was like, wow, it was so tough. And I was at the stage then where I was worried about beard growth, because I was shaving every day and it was so hard to do. And by the end of the shift, luckily we had to wear masks, but by the end of the shift it was starting to grow again. And it was like, I hated every part of that. I thought, I'm going to have to pay for laser treatment now. So it was something else I had to pay for, and I started that, and again it was another liberating part of my journey where I was getting laser, and I'm so far down the line now, now that the NHS has kicked in. But having laser made me feel good, and it was one of the best decisions that I've made. And it got to, where was I up to then? I had laser, and I think we were coming out of the first lockdown now, and I wanted to get back to football. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But it was like, I was happy with who I was, and it was sort of like I was waiting for more. There was still no support, and I was at the stage where I can do this myself, I don't need help. But people around me were saying that I was starting to struggle. I burst into tears at work. Everything was getting really, really hard. And it was the fact that I couldn't go out, I couldn't do anything. or if I was going out, I kept turning around to see if people were looking at me, and I felt embarrassed, I felt ashamed at that stage. Although I was very happy,
Yeah.
there was two sides of it where I was like really struggling in who I was. I couldn't go back to the online doctor to get any sort of help because it cost too much money. I couldn't do it. And my GP didn't know anything. My first GP that I went to in Crewe would not prescribe my hormones. They wouldn't do it. The reason was they didn't know anything about them. So again, it was at that stage where I thought, I need a GP that will, because I can't afford to lay this out every single month. So I sent a letter to every GP practice in Crewe, and only one GP practice actually got back to me. And they said, yes, we'll support you. And I'm still with them today. And they're really, really helpful. They prescribe for me. If I need blood tests, they'll do them for me. But again, there wasn't really any support from them.
I was just going to say, that's what you needed, wasn't it?
I needed support.
Yeah.
I needed support. I needed counselling. I needed something, but I was too pig-headed to ask for it at the time. It's like, I can speak to my friends, because I've made loads of friends at this stage. I can speak to them and they'll help me.
Yeah.
But they could only help me so far, because I could ask women to help me, but they've not been through this journey that I'm on. I could ask men to help me, they've not been on this journey. And I was being told, ask other trans people. I was like, no, I don't want to. Don't need to. I'm all right on my own. And it was something that I totally blanked out, and I just didn't do anything with. But it was like, I needed help at that time, and it just wasn't there.
Where would you say you're at now?
Well, now the NHS has kicked in. I got my first appointment in January, and as soon as I had the appointment, I was diagnosed with gender dysphoria. So it's like, that's done.
Yeah.
So that's another tick off my list. So that was only in January, so I'm waiting for appointments to kick in. I've got an appointment in a couple of weeks where they're going to up my hormones, because I've been doing it all on my own. I've bypassed so many appointments. So it was like, yeah, they're going to give me more hormones. They've referred me for counselling, which I haven't heard from yet, but it's going to happen soon. It's the fact that I know that it's coming. That I'm so happy that that is there. They've given me money for laser treatment. So my laser treatment is now being paid for. I was like, that is such a weight off my mind. They've done the blood tests with me. I'm going to get voice training, because my voice is probably the worst part of me that I hate, because I can't tell the difference in my voice from the way it was then to the way it is now. But people say that I sound all right, but you know yourself, if it's not right, it's not right.
Yeah, it's in what you feel like.
Yeah, isn't it? And it just doesn't feel right. But I know, again, if I think about it, it is. Because the woman that I am now is happy. I'm happy with the way I look. It's taken me years to grow my hair, and it's like I'm scared to get it cut because it might not grow back. And it's like, there's just like everything that I want, I've achieved. And the thing was, when I had my first appointment, they said, well, you've been living full time now for so many years. They said, we're probably going to refer you for surgery in November. And I was like, what? That was something that I was waiting for maybe 5 years down the line. I wasn't expecting it. I mean, there's going to be a queue when I am referred, but it's like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. It's like, oh. But the final thing on the health bit with it was, I wanted my gender recognition certificate, and you have to be living full time for 2 years. And when I spoke to my doctor, she said, we can't backdate it because you wasn't with us. We can only give it you from January. And she said, have you got any proof that you changed your name? Because I was dying for it in April, where I could get my, well, it should have been officially last November, but I had no evidence to say I was living full time. There was no council tax bills. There was no driving licence, there was no deed poll. That all happened in June.
Yeah.
So 2 years from that will be this June. And I was like, she saw that I was really down and depressed. She said, why are you down? And I said, because I wanted that certificate so I could change my birth certificate. It was on my list of to do. And she said, why is your birth certificate so important? And she worded it that way. I was like, because it's me. I wanted to say female because that's who I am. She said, when was the last time you got your birth certificate out and looked at it? I went, yeah, you got a point there. She said, are you male or female? I said, I'm female. So why do you need that piece of paper? She said, what does your driving licence say? It says what it should say, who I am. HRC, yeah, it says who I am. And your medical records, yeah, it says I'm female. And it's like, so why do you need that piece of paper? I said, well, saying it that way, I don't. And so she said, why can't you wait till June? Is there an issue with that? And it was like, yeah. So if I'd have had someone like that to support me, just to
give a different angle, isn't it?
to say like, well, this is how it is. You don't need a panel of 7 strangers judging you to say you're a male or a female.
Yeah.
You know who you are. We know who you are. Everyone around you knows who you are. So why do you need that piece of paper?